By 7:18 in the morning, three bulldozers were chewing toward the north fence of Amos Rusk's ranch. Then they stopped. Not because of a judge, not because of a gun, because the billion-dollar lease in the lawyer's hand had been signed by Mercy. And Mercy had been dead for 7 years. Amos Rusk sat in a splintered chair on the front porch of the Highline Ranch, shaving the edge of a cedar fence stake with a pocket knife that had outlived 2 pickups and 1 marriage. He was 78 years old, narrow in the shoulders, hard in the hands, with eyes the color of winter rain. The dawn wind came over the eastern Oregon sage flats and slapped dust against the porch boards. Down by the cattle guard, Meridian Grid Renewables had brought a convoy. 3 yellow bulldozers, 2 excavators, 4 black SUVs. 1 county-scale project wrapped in private security jackets and corporate certainty. A young attorney in a navy overcoat climbed the porch steps and held up a tablet. Mr. Rusk, the access easement was executed 91 days ago. Meridian has a verified digital signature and a recorded 99-year lease corridor. You have been notified. You are obstructing a lawful work crew. Amos shaved another curl off the cedar. Victor Hale stepped out of the lead SUV behind her. Meridian's Western Acquisitions Director. A tall man with a silver watch, perfect hair, and city shoes already ruined by ranch dust. "Amos," Victor called, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is progress. There are wind farms waiting on this connector. A lot of people need this line." Amos looked past him at the machines. Their blades were aimed straight at the old windbreak, where a rusted windmill turned in thin circles over a mound of dry grass. The attorney tapped the tablet again. "The signature is here. Mercy A. Rusk." Amos stood slowly. His knees sounded as if small gravel had been poured inside them. He walked to the porch rail and leaned close enough to see the name. "Mercy," he said. The attorney lifted her chin. "Yes, sir. Mercy A. Rusk. Verified through a third-party identity vendor, time-stamped, and accepted by the recorder's office." Amos nodded once. "That's tidy." Victor smiled. "At last, we agree on something." Amos slipped the pocket knife shut. "Mercy was my mule." The porch went quiet. The wind kept moving. Amos pointed toward the windmill. "She went down in the hard freeze of 19. I buried her out there past the greasewood with a cracked hip and more sense than any man in a Meridian jacket." Nobody spoke for a full 5 seconds. The attorney looked at the tablet, then at Victor, then at Amos. "That is not possible." Amos reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of oilcloth. Inside it was a yellow veterinary record, 2 county livestock cards, and a photograph of a gray mule standing beside a younger Amos in a winter pasture. "High Desert Large Animal Clinic," Amos said. "October 3rd, 2019. Euthanasia record. Mercy, 26 years old. Freeze brand on the left hip. No legal heirs. No thumbs." A short, hard laugh came from one of the bulldozer operators. Victor turned on him so fast, the man looked at the ground. The attorney swallowed. "There may have been a clerical confusion." Amos looked at the dozer blades again. "You drove 60 tons of steel through my south gate on a clerical confusion." A white sheriff's truck came over the rise before she could answer. throwing dust behind it in a long, pale tail. Amos watched it come. "I called Lena before breakfast," he said. "Told her some folks were trespassing with heavy equipment and a forged land instrument signed by a dead mule." Sheriff Lena Ortiz did not hurry when she stepped out. She never did. She was short, broad, and calm in a way that made nervous people talk too much. Her hat brim was stained with sweat. Her boots had manure on them. Her right hand rested nowhere near her sidearm, which somehow made the whole yard more serious. "Morning, Amos." "Morning, Sheriff." Victor marched toward her with one hand out. "Sheriff Ortiz, Victor Hale, Meridian Grid. We have a recorded lease. Your office was notified of this work window." Lena ignored the hand. "Show me." The attorney handed over the tablet and a printed packet. Lena read the signature page. Her face did not change. "Mercy A. Rusk," she said. Amos handed her the oilcloth packet. Lena read the veterinary record, then the livestock card. Then she glanced toward the windmill. "That mule still buried where your wife planted the yellow roses?" 2 feet north of them. Lena turned back to Victor. "Mr. Hale, I am no expert on renewable infrastructure, but in this county, dead livestock cannot grant 99-year easements." Victor's face tightened. "This is a documentation issue. We will correct it with counsel." "You will correct it from the road," Lena said. "Your crew crossed a posted gate, broke a cattle guard, and started clearing private ground with a forged instrument." The attorney began to speak. Lena held up one hand. "No." The word was small. It landed heavy. She looked at the dozer operators. "Engines off, cabs open, everybody out where I can see you." One by one, the bulldozers died. The silence after the engines felt bigger than the noise had been. Cooling metal ticked. A raven called from the fence line. The windmill squealed once and turned its tired circle. Victor pulled out his phone. "You have no idea what you're interfering with." Lena looked at the crushed cattle guard. "I know exactly what I'm standing in." Then she reached for the cuffs. By noon, the story had crossed the county. By sundown, it had crossed the state. Meridian had spent 4 years building the Cinderline Connector, a $1.2 billion transmission route meant to carry wind power across the high desert. Most ranchers had taken the money. Some had taken it gladly. Some had taken it because fighting a utility lawyer is a good way to lose a ranch by the inch. Amos had said no from the beginning. He did not hate wind towers. He did not hate progress. He hated men who looked at land from an airplane and called it empty. The Highline Ranch was 11,000 acres of brittle grass, rimrock, calving draws, old water pipes, and family graves. His grandfather had filed the first water claim there with a pencil stub and a horse that bit strangers. His father had run sheep through the same draws until cattle made more sense. Amos had buried his wife behind the kitchen garden, his brother below the ridge, and Mercy near the windmill because she had earned a piece of shade. Meridian had started with letters, then came maps, then offers, then warnings with polite fonts. Victor Hale had visited twice. The first time, he brought a fruit basket and talked about partnership. The second time, he brought an appraiser and talked about inevitability. Amos listened to both speeches. Then he said the same thing. No. Victor did not understand that word. In his line of work, no was usually just a number that had not been sweetened enough. So Meridian found another door. A ranch supply mailer arrived in Amos's box the next month. Free mineral lick, winter delivery, sign and return to confirm livestock ownership. The paper had 4 pages. The useful part was on page 1. The trap was on page 4, in gray print so small it looked like dust. Amos read it at the kitchen table under a lamp. He saw the authorization language. He saw the identity release clause. He saw enough to know somebody wanted a name they could move through a machine. So Amos signed it. Mercy A. Rusk. Then he put the envelope in the mail and waited. The mistake Meridian made was not believing an old man could read fine print. The bigger mistake was believing paper was heavier than ground. 3 days after Lena Ortiz cuffed Victor Hale, Meridian filed an emergency motion in federal court. Their lawyers called the arrest a rural misunderstanding. They called Amos unstable. They called the Mule story a stunt designed to extract more money. The hearing was held in Bend, in a courthouse with polished floors and glass doors that reflected Amos back at himself until he looked even smaller than he was. On Meridian's side sat 7 attorneys, 2 vice presidents, a crisis consultant, and Victor Hale with no watch on his wrist. On Amos's side sat Amos and Nora Keene. Nora was 71, half-retired, and famous in 3 counties for title work so precise it made young lawyers sweat. She wore a brown suit, kept her white hair pinned with a pencil, and carried every document in a cardboard apple box. Meridian's lead counsel spoke first. Your Honor, this matter concerns a narrow identity verification error. Meridian acted in good faith under a recorded easement. We are prepared to compensate Mr. Rusk generously to avoid delay. $14 million remains available. Amos stared at the table. $14 million was enough to replace every pipe, every gate, every roof, every bad year he had ever survived. It was enough to make the bank stop calling. Enough to pay the back-feed bill. Enough to give his granddaughter a life that did not begin with debt. That was the darkest hour of it. Not the bulldozers, not the cuffs, the number. Because money can sound reasonable when you are tired. Nora Keene touched the apple box. Your Honor, she said, Meridian is asking this court to treat a forged Mule signature as a paperwork accident. It was not an accident. It was a system. The judge looked over her glasses. Proceed. Nora lifted the ranch supply nailer from the box. This flyer went to 486 landowners across 3 eastern Oregon counties. Page 4 contains identity harvesting language, buried under promotional text. The names gathered from these flyers were then used to generate easement packets inside Meridian's acquisition portal. Meridian's counsel stood. Speculation. Nora did not look at him. I have the portal logs. The courtroom changed temperature. Nora laid out the printouts one by one. Timestamps, upload records, internal approval chains. A digital notary entry generated in Portland at 2:14 a.m. A message from Victor Hale to the acquisition team that said, Rusk is the last nail. Get me a recordable name by Friday. Then another message. Do not slow this for a field signature. The judge leaned forward. Nora reached the last page. Mercy A. Rusk was not the only impossible signer. Meridian recorded preliminary access documents from a man dead 12 years, a trust dissolved in probate, and a ranch partnership that ceased to exist before the youngest associate at that table finished law school. The corporate table stopped moving. For the first time all morning, Victor Hale looked directly at Amos. Amos did not look back. He was watching the judge, because paper can lie in many directions. But enough paper, stacked in the right order, starts pointing at the truth. The judge ordered Meridian to produce the full acquisition archive by 5 that evening. By 9, 2 federal agents were in the server room of Meridian's Portland office. By morning, the Cinderline connector was frozen. The company tried to blame a vendor, then a subcontractor, then a junior analyst who had been on maternity leave when half the approvals were made. But the archive had teeth. It showed landmen coached to avoid face-to-face signatures. It showed executives ranking holdout ranches by age, debt, medical liens, and distance from legal services. It showed a spreadsheet with Amos's name highlighted in red. Risk note: stubborn, isolated, cash poor. Next to it, Victor Hale had written one word: breakable. That word did more damage than any forged signature. People who had stayed quiet began sending Nora envelopes, old letters, bad offers, suspicious forms. County clerks started checking records. Reporters dug through easement filings. Ranchers who had felt foolish for being pressured discovered they had not been foolish at all. They had been targeted. Meridian stock did not collapse because of one old mule. It collapsed because the mule proved the machine, and the machine had been eating land. The final hearing was held 6 weeks later. There were no fruit baskets now, no polished speeches about partnership, no talk of clean energy, as if clean power excused dirty hands. The judge's order ran 38 pages. Meridian's easement across the Highline Ranch was void. Its acquisition program in Oregon was suspended. Its land records were referred for criminal review. The Cinderline connector would lose its permit window. Civil penalties and restitution would be calculated ranch by ranch. Victor Hale stood when the marshals told him to stand. He looked older than he had that morning at the gate. Smaller, too. Without the SUVs, without the blades, without the men nodding behind him, he was just another person who had confused speed with power. As he passed Amos, he whispered, "You cost us everything." Amos finally looked at him. "No," he said, "you put everything on a mule." The restitution check reached the Highline Ranch 2 months later. $18,600,000. Amos set it on the kitchen table beside Mercy's old bridle. He looked at it for a long time. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator hum and the wind pushing at the window glass. He did not burn the check. That would have been dramatic. Amos had no use for dramatic. He used the money to do what rich men never expected poor men to do with money. He made it boring. He paid every debt, repaired the wells, replaced 4 miles of fence, bought back the water rights his father had lost in 1983. Then he signed the rest into a conservation easement, written so tightly no energy company, mining company, developer, or desperate heir could slice the Highline Ranch into a corridor again. The signing happened at the same kitchen table where he had once read the mailer's fine print. Nora Keene handed him the pen. "This one is in your name," she said. Amos looked toward the window. Out beyond the windbreak, the mule's grave was covered in spring grass. The yellow roses his wife had planted were starting to leaf out. The windmill turned slowly. Not because anyone paid it to, but because wind had always crossed that ground, and the ground had never needed permission to remain itself. Amos signed, not because land can be owned forever. It cannot, but it can be guarded long enough to outlast a lie. By summer, the bulldozer tracks had faded. New grass stitched the scars shut. The cattle guard rang clean under truck tires. The wind still came hard over the sage, carrying dust, meadowlark calls, and the old metal squeal of the windmill. People kept asking Amos how he beat Meridian. He always gave the same answer. I didn't. Then he would point at the pasture. The ground did. Meridian came with paper heavy enough to move $1 billion. Amos answered with a dead mule, a careful eye, and the truth under his boots. The paper changed hands. The ground kept its name.